What's up everyone, Pags here at MEI Studio. You may have noticed that I'm not in my normal surrounding here. Well, there's a band that's in the studio at the moment and they've kind of taken over the control room, so there's pedal boards and equipment and everything all over the place. Didn't have the room in there to set up the lights and the camera and everything else. So I'm in the big room today. Hopefully this works out okay and it sounds alright. This week we have another bench tips video here combined with a sort of mic review. I'm looking at the AKG Perception 420 microphone. The Perception line of mics was introduced back in 2005. At first there were three, the Perception 100, 200, and 400. In 2008 the mics were re-released, but this time there were four of these mics. The 420, which sported three patterns along with a high-pass filter and a pad. The 220, which was essentially the same as the 420 except it only had the cardioid pattern. The 170, which was a small diaphragm condenser, and the 120, which was an electret condenser with a pad and a filter. By 2010, two more mics were added to the lineup, the 820, which was a large tube 9-pattern condenser, and the 120 USB, which was AKG's first USB microphone. All the mics, with the exception of the USB version, were a matte finish baby blue color. The USB 120 was done up in all black. While it brought back memories of RoboCop, the color wasn't exactly critically or user acclaimed. The mics were a budget line intended as an entry level into AKG's product offering, which has something for every budget. The Perception 420 was originally street priced around $300 USD. While the lower models, the 120, were going for around $99 USD and the 220 around $180. The flagship tube mic, the 820, was going for around $700, which for a tube mic was pretty good considering the logo on its front. Red Cabin Acoustic did an absolutely phenomenal job of comparing the lines as they changed over the years. I highly recommend it if you're interested in a deeper dive into the differences of these mics. For now, I'm going to stick with the 420. Either marketing over at AKG has a sense of humor or they're completely oblivious to what their model number means in some circles. Those in the know can have a chuckle either way. The circuit of the 420 is almost an exact copy of the Neumann U87 AI. The capsule is the same style and the transformer is a halfway decent approximation as well. Now, I'm not a fan of the U87 AI. I feel it's a bit too bright for its own good, which is why some people love it, but I like my mics a little on the darker side. So, being that this mic is a pretty accurate copy of the circuit, this mic is a little too bright for its own good too, and that's what I'm aiming to fix today in this mod video. The mod, by all accounts, is pretty easy. I literally need to change one capacitor on the circuit to roll those highs off a bit more so the mic isn't so bright and in your face. I'm all about getting what I want at the mic and doing as little as possible later on. Commitment isn't an issue for me, but not everyone has or wants that level of confidence when it comes to recording a source, especially if it's a paying client that changes their mind often. Let's take a look at the mod and then listen to the before and after. And one last thing, this video is meant to be a documentation of the mod that I performed on my own mic. If you're not skilled with a soldering iron, or even if you are, I take no responsibility for what you do to your own equipment as a result of watching this. If you like the sound of the mod and don't feel you're up to performing the task, find a professional that can. Let's get to it. Alright, so we have the Perception 420 mic here. And to open the mic, you just have to use a spanner tool like this to loosen up the ring on the bottom around the XLR connector. Once it's loosened up, you can pretty much just take it off by hand, and once it's out, the body slips off. And that's pretty much it as far as disassembly goes. We don't need to take off the head basket, and we don't need to take off any of the circuit boards or anything. The mod can be done with the mic completely intact like this as it is. And we're looking for one specific capacitor to replace here, and it is right here. So let's get to it. We're going to have to remove that capacitor and then put in a new one in its place. And since I'm not a fan of surface mount stuff, this should be kind of fun. I take a little bit of solder braid here, which is used to remove solder. And I'm just going to heat up on one side of the component and I will wind up sucking some of the solder off of that end. And then the other side of it. I'm just trying to get as much solder off of there as possible so the component removes easily. And now I'm just going to heat up one side of it until it lifts off the board. Use some tweezers here to kind of help pull it up while it's getting heated. And it should come off pretty easily. One side's off, and now the other side. And that's it. The piece is off, and the board is clear. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is just add a little bit of solder onto the pads that we just cleaned off, some new solder, just so that I have something to stick the new component onto when I get it in there. And we have the new capacitor here. I just got to make sure that the leads are bent in a way that they won't touch and they'll make contact with the pads that are on there. Now the pads are very close together, so you do need a steady hand and you need to be pretty accurate, and your soldering iron has to have a pretty decently sharp point on it. These pads are meant for surface mount components, not through hole, which is what I'm putting on here, but it can be done in a pinch, which we'll see in a second. So I'm just making sure that the legs of this piece are close enough together that they're going to make contact with the two pads that are in there. And first get the far pad, and it just takes a little quick touch, that's it. And one of the legs is on, and now to do the second leg, again, just got to make sure that the leg meets the pad. And just make sure that's soldered correctly, it's on there, it's not touching anything. And that's it, the mod is complete. That's all that needs to be done to change the roll off on the top end of this mic. One capacitor change. Now I'm just going to move it around in a way that it's not going to wind up making contact with the body once it's on. But should be good to go on this. All we have to do now is put the body back on and tighten on that weird ring that they put on the bottom of it. Perception 420. Sibilance, sibilance. The Perception 420. The Perception 420. Sibilance, sibilance. The Perception 420. So what are your thoughts? Should I have left it alone, or do you think rolling off some of that top end was warranted? Know that if the roll-off was too much, but you felt as though some of that extra top end could have used some taming, I didn't have to go with the cap value that I put in there. It started as a 220 picofarad, and I bumped it up to a 680 picofarad. I could have split the difference with a 390 or 470 picofarad and rolled off a little bit less. Experimentation is the spice of modding. Now, since the 220 and the 420 are essentially the same mic, just with no pattern selection on the 220, this mod can be performed on it as well. The 120 is a completely different design, and this mod would look very different on that mic, if you could even do it at all. The newer P line of AKG's mics are essentially the same as the old blue ones, just with a different paint job, so this mod would work for the newer versions as well. You just need to identify the right capacitor to change. As always, if you've gotten anything from today's video, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're interested in studio mics and other things audio related, hit that notify button so you'll be notified when we put up a new video. If you have any suggestions for a new video or any questions regarding this one, please contact me in the comments section or send us a message through our website. I'd love to hear from you. Well, that's it for this time. This is Pags, signing off.